Just noticed the UN flag.
The what?
The UN flag.
Yeah.
Occupy Activists Assembly. It's Friday, January the 20th, and all the usual suspects are here. So we'll head to the auditorium and see how the show goes. I have one so far, but I should have 4. Yes, oddly enough, I was on the list.
Yeah, I'm having some trouble registering here, even though I sent out the emails.
So anyway, if we're not going to talk about this, if we don't want to cause trouble, then let's go right there.
Okay, thanks.
Hi there.
So what do you have, like email address?
First name.
The importance of outreach, protest, mass mobilization, and of constant recruitment of new activists. Our first speaker will be Judy Rebick, is a veteran activist on feminist, democracy, anti-racist, and international solidarity issues. She's also a writer, teacher, and sometimes journalist. She has a new ebook coming out in March called Occupy This.
Carolyn and I were just talking because 30 years ago in this room, she and I were on this very stage with Dr. Henry Morgentaler. And we had a rally, their place was packed right to the back. And outside we had a big demonstration of anti-choice people that we successfully stopped from having. The pro-choice movement was out in the streets. The women's movement was out in the streets. International Women's Day was huge. It was the 80s, wasn't it, when we marched through the Eaton Center in solidarity with the Eaton strike. It was the environmental movement was just getting going, and on Earth Day it was really out in the streets demonstrations of the environmental movement. The labor movement was really active. Every movement was out in the streets, and we were winning victories. So I want to make the point that we've won these victories in part, I think in large part, because of Occupy. Now, Occupy didn't lead these struggles. But why am I saying that? I'm saying that for 2 reasons. First of all, Occupy has scared the shit out of the powers that be. And then what Occupy did is, by its brilliance, by its tactics, by its mobilization, by its ability to reach out to so many people and touch them, it forced the media, it forced ordinary people, it didn't force ordinary people, it let ordinary people believe in their own perceptions about what was really happening in the world, which gave ordinary people the idea that we could change the world. That's the most important thing so far that Occupy has done. And there's a feeling in all these camps. And the feeling is a feeling, and I'm not even comfortable saying it, I was telling my friend Mike, of love, of connection. It's a feeling of love. In Occupy New York, in Occupy Wall Street, Occupy New York has, well, last count had 70 working groups. So I think that I'm learning what Occupy is about. I think it's a work in progress. In Spain, they say, we're moving slow because we're going far. And I think we have to be patient.
Our second panelist is Syed Hussan, is an organizer, activist, writer based in Toronto. Hussan has been involved with anti-colonial, migrant justice, feminist, anti-racist, environmental justice, anti-war, and prison abolition movement, and is active with No One Is Illegal Toronto and Toronto
into the financial district and onto City Hall. And so, just like for most of you, Occupy holds a very special place in my heart, for it was a burst of freedom in a very long time. I think Occupy movements are effective because they're grounded in the struggles of the past, be it the Indignados movement, the Arab Spring, that we've heard about recently. But I want to talk about some occupations in Toronto. And again and again and again, we have a history of occupations in this city, and that's why Occupy is effective. It's also effective because Occupy is a coming of a particular kind of age. When back, there was a time in the left when there was always a question of, is it race or is it class? Is it the issue of women or is it the issue of class? The Occupy movement is a movement where questions of difference are firmly entrenched. You know, this is why Indigenous writers, warriors, activists have responded to the idea of Occupy in South City. With obvious response that here, on one of the last remaining occupied settler colonies, the colonizers still rule. Each of these cities are already occupied. Right? Yet everyone who came to occupy implicitly or explicitly accepted that for us to really challenge the 1%, we would have to break their laws. Right? We decided to break the law because so much of what we oppose is legal. So much of what we desire is illegal. We broke the law because these laws are made broken. Right? They were made to break us. The police raided us. They kidnapped 4 of our comrades. And so in the hundreds, we went to 52 Division with many members of Occupy Toronto. And we asserted that we would leave no one behind. An effective movement is one that takes care of everyone on its side of the barricades. And I think on Tuesday, Occupy Toronto showed that. I also think that Occupy is an effective response to austerity.
I think as of right now, it's 10 tenths minus 1, but there should still be 9 there. Our third speaker, Carolyn Egan, is the president of the Steelworkers Toronto Area Council, United Steelworkers Local 8300.
And they're telling us that we're all in it together, that their measures are necessary to keep governments from going bankrupt and to keep corporations competitive. That's certainly what they're telling us in the trade union movement. But it's not simply a question of cost trimming, cutting deficits, or bringing budgets into line. They want to use this opportunity to fundamentally change the nature of society and the role of the state. And there is no doubt that they're determined to fight this war down to the last drop of our blood, using financial loopholes, continuing to make profits, giving massive bonuses to upper management. Why not nationalize the banks and the corporations, bring those profits into the public realm, do away with the deficits? Why not? Well, the answer is that the attacks are not some kind of a pragmatic response to an economic crisis like Rob Ford or Harper or McGinty are telling us, but the implementation of an economic ideology intended to serve the wealthy, the 1% that you so clearly identified. I know in this city around Indigenous rights, the rallying at City Hall, the working with unions like the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, the Steel Workers, you marched with us to the banks and pointed the finger where it should be pointed. I know you've been helping one of our long-term strikes, 2 years, mostly Hispanic workers at Infinity Rubber.
You want to have a discussion about this?
Sure.
All right, let's get to some place where you can see our faces.
Yeah, Occupy Toronto, we're just here, Regroup and Occupy. We've got a bit of a review here. I guess, what do you guys think?
Well, I thought it was interesting. There's a lot of people there. There's maybe a couple hundred people there. You know, it's one of those things where it would be really nice if people who wanted some things done could bring more ideas to the table. They're talking a lot about hurt feelings of different people, but less about poverty and less about the economic reason behind that.
Came in and they tried to roll back union rights in a way that we hadn't seen in decades and decades.
It's a good thing that they can get this many people together. It's just that the purpose of it, I think, needs to be better defined, and what they're looking at. You want to talk about colonialism? Let's you know, we need to deal with colonialism. Let's research colonialism, study it.
Well, the problem is that there's a lot of rhetoric going on there. For example, their last speaker, who was a leader in the steel union from the United States, first thing she did was get up and blame capitalism and start blaming the problems of the world on the right wing. Well, you and I both know that the right wing and the left wing are the same bird. You know, the real problem is globalism, not capitalism. Problem is that the whole movement has been taken over by a socialist ideology that wants to blame all the problems on capitalism. Capitalism is not the problem, globalism is. Out of the 3 speakers there tonight, not once did I hear any of them blame it on the banks. One of those speakers actually got up and started talking about
austerity is a massive
the government's taking
it's
your
a
money.
theft from our public services to police. It's a theft from our public services to building armies, to building prisons, to building detention centers. It's a theft from our public services while we see anti-immigrant rhetoric rise, while we see an attack on unions, right? It's money being taken away from our public services and given as a bailout to corporations, to oil and mining gas companies.
No,
So those are
they're
the
giving
fronts
it
we
to
need
the
talk
fucking
about. When we
banks.
talk about Occupy,
Not one
when
of
we talk
those
about
people
corporations,
got up
we need
and
to talk
said,
about prisons.
the
We need to
reason
talk about
that the
xenophobia.
government is
We need to
imposing
talk about
austerity
attack
on you
unions.
is part of the big banker scam of the way that our money is created. The sub-agenda to Occupy is a one world government and a one world banking system, and they're not against it, they're for it.
Well, yeah, here we are at OISI, and we got in the lobby a UN flag.
UN flag in the lobby?
Yeah.
Because I'm just thinking practically here. It would be great if local cities could occupy their own Occupy movements and say, no, hold on, we did a little work on this. You've already got an organizational framework. Let's introduce more ideas and get kind of an open marketplace of ideas and see what the most compelling things are. I mean, and it could work. I mean, look at Ron Paul in the U.S. with the end the Fed rallies and his association with ending the Federal Reserve private bank there and moving to a better system of money that's nationalized, it's publicly owned, and that's more accountable.
Well, in the end, that's what it all comes down to is money. And that's the one issue these people in Occupy are skirting is the creation of money. And tonight's symposium only made it clear that the unions are exercising their control over the Occupy movement.
Well, yeah, it's the people, the establishment, the corporations, the banks, the super rich people who kind of hide how they're screwing us, but we all know they are. We can all say they are, but then no one can really explain how and how to stop it when it should be that hard, when it's kind of out there. They create a framework. So this is an example of that framework. What do? They'll take a bunch of people together who are kind of outside their own social circles, bring them into one that guarantees them a spot. It doesn't matter what you are, tall, short, able, disabled, gay, straight. It's an inclusive group, but at the same time, that excludes the group from the rest of the culture. So that isolates the people that are involved in this type of thing. Yet, it also is an inclusive space. The people that are involved feel a certain attachment to it. And then the pièce de résistance
almost
is up
in
at
a
the front.
cultish way, by
Right,
the way.
and the pièce de résistance is up at the front with the people speaking who make sure that it's a simple message that they already understand and already feel and make it about feelings instead of economics and poverty. So
They're talking about a lot of feelings in there, the love within the group. But, what they're not talking about is the censorship within that group. There's a lot of censorship going on in Occupy. There's a lot of shutting down people that have political opinions on where this organization should go. There's a lot of control going on there.
I think it started because of the human mic. Because with the human mic, if you say, I love you, what happens? Yeah, it's so great, right? So I think it started like that, but then people started to do it more.
the whole game is divide and conquer. So even dividing the critics of Occupy from Occupy and conquering them both is something that I think is being accomplished here. And I think that we're all guilty of it, because anyone who criticizes anyone has to be careful of how they do it, or you can't, appeal to them. So I say with respect to Occupy, it's really, really simple. If most people there are cool, then they should, look into things further, look into the critics of Occupy. But the critics of Occupy should also understand that in today's world, where we can kind of think what we want, feel what we want, it doesn't matter, it's all about me, it's how you feel, well, I believe this, I want to believe this. If you have a choice to feel positive about the Occupy movements because that's your bent, then you'll make that choice. And if I come along and say something negative about the Occupy movements, and that's the choice you make, to think negatively or positively about it, and you know what the general response is among the people you associate with, you're going to try and keep it. So I would say look at these things positively, but spin it to include more options for them and for everyone else. Because if you just go against it, you lose them, and they are a core group of people who, by and large, are sincere, I would think, with a few who probably aren't, and then, that's worth exploring as well.
Great.
I agree.
You guys want to introduce yourselves? Or you want to go anonymous?
Lawrence McCurry, activist, writer, chair of Communications and Publicity Canada Action Party.
Sure. Vijay Sarma, activist, philosopher, journalist, artist. Wear a few hats and yeah, try and speak the truth once in a while whenever possible.
Or no. All right, thanks a lot, guys.